The alien commander stood tall, her dark armor shining under the dim lights of the warship. Her name was Serana, and across the galaxy her name carried fear. Wherever she walked, soldiers bowed and enemies trembled. She was not just a leader, she was a symbol of power. For years, Serana had fought against countless species. She had crushed rebels, destroyed colonies, and conquered worlds. To her, war was not a struggle, it was a game, and she always won. She believed she was untouchable, a force beyond defeat. When her eyes turned to Earth, she did not hesitate. To her, humans were nothing special. Fragile bodies, short lives, limited weapons, what chance could they have against her empire? In her mind, humanity was weak, and she laughed at the very idea of them standing against her. But whispers traveled across the galaxy. Whispers of humans who would not bow. Humans who resisted even when outnumbered. Humans who fought with something no alien could understand. Unbreakable spirit. These whispers reached Serana, but she dismissed them. To her, humans were insects, annoying but powerless. One evening, as her ship floated silently above a ruined human city, Serana stood near the wide glass window. Below, smoke rose into the dark sky, fires burned across the streets, and broken buildings told the story of defeat. She smiled. So fragile, she whispered to herself. So easy to break. Her soldiers approached, their metal boots echoing against the floor. One of them spoke carefully, almost nervous. "Commander, there is news. A human fighter survived the last battle. He escaped our troops, they say. He killed an entire squad alone." Serana's sharp eyes glowed with amusement. "A single human? Do you expect me to fear that?" The soldier lowered his head quickly. "No, Commander, but—" "The men are talking. They say this human is dangerous. They say he fights like no other." For a moment, silence filled the chamber. Then Serana laughed. The sound was cold and sharp, echoing across the room. "Let them talk. Let this human believe he is strong. In the end, he is nothing." But deep inside, something small stirred, a flicker of curiosity. She did not show it, but part of her wondered, could a human truly fight on equal ground? Later that night, Serana walked through the halls of her ship. Everywhere she passed, guards stood straighter. Scientists bowed lower and pilots avoided her eyes. She enjoyed their fear. It reminded her that she was above them all. Yet the whispers about the human did not die. They grew louder. Even her elite guards spoke of him in hushed voices. A soldier who refused to surrender. A man who fought with bare hands against armored aliens. A survivor who kept rising again and again. One morning, Serana entered the War Council. Maps of Earth glowed on the table. Red marks showing cities under alien control. She tapped the glowing lines with a single clawed finger. "Earth will fall completely within weeks," she declared. "No human can stop it." Her officers nodded, but their eyes betrayed doubt. She could see it. They were thinking about him. Finally, she spoke again, her voice sharp. "Find this human. Bring him to me alive." The officers saluted quickly. They knew what it meant when Serana gave such an order. She wanted to prove a point. To crush hope itself. Serana returned to her private chamber, standing once again before the great window that looked down on the burning world. She closed her eyes for a moment, imagining the human brought before her, broken, powerless, crawling at her feet. The thought made her smile. But far away in the ruins of the city, that very human was moving through the shadows, his clothes torn, his body bruised, yet his spirit unshaken. He carried no fear, only determination. He knew one day he would face the alien commander. He knew the galaxy thought her untouchable, and he knew that one day he would prove them all wrong. The ruins of the city stretched out like a graveyard. Smoke curled from broken towers, streets were cracked, and silence hung heavy except for the distant sound of alien machines. But among the shadows, one man moved with steady steps. His name was Daniel Hale. Daniel was not the strongest soldier nor the most famous. He had no shining armor, no alien weapon in his hands. What he carried instead was something far more dangerous, his will. The aliens thought humans would kneel quickly. That fear would crush them. But Daniel had seen enough to know the truth. Humans always fought back. They had fought nature, hunger, storms, and wars among themselves for thousands of years. Why would aliens be any different? He slipped into the remains of a library. Dust covered the shelves, pages from old books scattered across the floor. For a moment he picked up a torn page and stared at the faded words. History, legends, stories of humans who stood when no one else dared. He folded the page and kept it in his pocket. It reminded him that he was not alone, that behind him stood generations of resilience. Outside, a small group of survivors waited. Men and women, young and old, their faces pale from exhaustion. They looked at Daniel as if he carried the last spark of hope. "Are they coming?" one whispered. Daniel nodded slowly. "They will come. But we are not finished yet." The group exchanged nervous glances. Some clutched makeshift weapons, others carried nothing at all. Yet when Daniel spoke, their shoulders straightened as if his words alone gave them strength. News of him had spread, even when he never wanted it. Soldiers told stories of how Daniel fought alone against a squad of aliens, how he had killed them one by one using nothing but his rifle, his knife, and his hands. Some called him reckless, others called him insane. But to the people hiding in the ruins, he was something else, proof that humans could stand. At night, while the survivors slept, Daniel kept watch. He remembered the faces of those who had fallen, his friends, his family, his unit. Anger burned deep inside him, but it was not wild rage. It was a fire he controlled, feeding it only when the moment was right. And somewhere above, in the alien warship, Sarana the commander waited for him. She thought she would break him, humiliate him, crush him in front of her army, but Daniel carried no fear of her. He had seen death already. What could she take from him that life had not already stolen? The next morning, alien patrols entered the city. Their machines scanned every corner, hunting for the human who had defied them. Survivors panicked, some wanting to flee, but Daniel raised his hand. "Stay quiet. Stay hidden. I will deal with them." They stared at him wide-eyed. One young man shook his head. "You can't fight them alone." Daniel gave a small smile. "Watch me." He moved into the streets, slipping between shadows, his footsteps silent. 2 alien soldiers marched near the old subway entrance, their armor glowing faintly under the sunlight. They spoke in their guttural tongue, confident, careless. Daniel crouched low, waiting, his breathing calm. He counted their steps. Then in one sharp motion he leapt. His blade struck first, sliding between the alien's plates of armor. The second turned, raising his weapon, but Daniel was already inside his guard. His fist slammed against the alien's throat, then another strike, and the soldier fell gasping. Silence returned. 2 aliens lay dead on the cracked ground. From the shadows, survivors watched in awe. To them, it looked impossible. To Daniel, it was only survival. Word spread quickly, faster than fire. By the end of the day, every survivor in the ruins knew the story. Daniel had killed another squad. He was unstoppable, and more than that, he was human. High above, Sarana heard the report. Her officer spoke carefully. "Commander, it is him again." "The human." Sarana's lips curved in a smile, cold and amused. "Good, let him play his little game. Soon he will stand before me." But inside, her curiosity grew sharper. This was not just a human hiding in the dark. This was a challenge to her pride. And Sarana never ignored a challenge. As the sun set, Daniel climbed the broken tower of a ruined skyscraper. He looked out at the horizon, where alien lights glowed in the distance. He knew they would not stop hunting him. He knew Sarana wanted him alive, and he welcomed it, for Daniel Hale was no longer just a soldier. He was resistance itself. The city had grown silent again. Ash floated in the air like gray snow, settling on broken cars, shattered windows, and lifeless streets. The survivors hid deep underground, holding their breath, waiting for the next wave of alien machines. But Daniel Hale did not hide. He stood on the edge of the ruins, his eyes fixed on the sky. He knew they were coming for him, and he was right. The alien warship descended slowly, its shadow spreading across the city. It hovered like a predator above its prey, engines humming low. From its belly, a smaller craft broke free, gliding down with sharp wings of steel. Dust rose as it landed in the empty square. The ramp lowered. Soldiers marched out first, their armor glowing faintly, weapons raised. Their movements were precise, cold, mechanical, and then she came. Sarana. Her tall figure stepped into the ruins, her black armor reflecting the firelight from the burning streets. Around her, the soldiers bowed slightly, but she did not look at them. Her gaze searched the ruins with calm arrogance, as if the entire city belonged to her. Daniel watched from the shadows. His heart beat steady, not with fear, but with focus. He had heard the stories about her, how she never lost, how she believed no one could touch her. Now she was here, and he was ready. Sarana's voice cut through the silence, cold and sharp. Human, she called, her words echoing against the broken walls. Come out. Do not hide like the insect you are. You wanted my attention. Now you have it. Her soldiers scanned the area, weapons raised. But Serana did not wait. She stepped forward into the center of the square, arms folded behind her back. I give you this chance, she said, her tone almost mocking. Face me now. Show me the courage your kind whispers about. From the darkness of the ruined subway entrance, Daniel stepped out. His clothes were torn, his rifle strapped to his back, his knife at his side. His face was calm, his eyes locked on hers. The soldiers raised their weapons, but Serana lifted her hand. No, she ordered. He is mine. For the first time, their eyes met. Alien arrogance against human defiance. A commander who believed herself untouchable against a man who refused to break. The world around them seemed to hold its breath. You are smaller than I imagined, Serana said, tilting her head slightly, her voice dripping with amusement. So fragile. One strike and you will fall. Daniel did not answer. He kept walking until he stood just a few meters away. The distance between them felt like a line drawn in blood. You do not speak. She pressed, her smile cruel. Are you already afraid? Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice low but steady. I am not afraid of you. The words hung in the air, simple yet powerful. Serana's soldiers shifted uneasily, as if even they could feel the weight behind them. Serana laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. Brave words for a man standing before death. Her hand moved fast, too fast for any normal human. In a blur, she struck at him, a backhand blow meant to send him crashing to the ground. The survivors watching from hidden windows gasped, but Daniel did not fall. He moved with precision, his arm rising to block, his body twisting to absorb the impact. The strike landed, but instead of breaking, he slid back one step and stood tall again. His eyes never left hers. For the first time in her long life, Serana's smile faded. You blocked me, she whispered, almost to herself. Then louder, sharper. Impossible! Daniel's lips tightened into the faintest of smiles. You're not untouchable. The square went silent. The soldiers looked to their commander, waiting for her reaction. Anger flashed in her eyes, but beneath it something else flickered, something she had not felt in years. Doubt. Serana stepped closer, her claws flexing. Then show me, human. Show me your strength. Show me why they speak your name in whispers. Daniel shifted his stance, ready. His hand brushed against the knife at his belt, his eyes scanning every angle. He knew this fight was not just his. It was for every survivor, for every human who still believed they could stand. The first encounter had begun. The air between them felt heavy, charged with tension. Every breath, every movement mattered. One wrong step could mean death. But Daniel did not waver. He had waited for this moment. And now it was here. And Serana, for all her pride, realized something she had never expected. This human was not like the others. This one might actually touch her. The ruined square was silent except for the crackle of distant flames. Serana stood tall, her black armor glinting, her claws flexing at her sides. Across from her, Daniel Hale stood firm, his shoulders squared, his eyes steady. Two worlds faced each other, alien arrogance against human defiance. Her soldiers watched from the edges, silent, their weapons lowered by her command. They had never seen their leader fight a human directly. To them, the outcome seemed obvious. But Serana herself felt something new, something sharp pressing at the back of her mind. Doubt. She crushed the thought at once. You think blocking one strike makes you strong? Serana's voice rang cold. You are nothing. I could end you with a single blow. Daniel said nothing. He only shifted his stance, grounding his feet on the cracked stone. His silence was louder than words, and it angered her. With a sharp cry, Serana lunged forward, her claws slicing through the air. Daniel moved, fast but not reckless, his body twisting just enough to avoid the strike. He countered with a quick jab of his fist, hitting her armored chest. The sound echoed, metal against bone. It did not pierce her armor, but it forced her back a step. The soldiers gasped. Serana's eyes narrowed. No one had ever dared to strike her. No one had ever pushed her back, not even a little. You dare, she hissed. Daniel's answer was calm, steady. I will not kneel. Her fury exploded. She launched forward again, her movements a blur, claws slashing, strikes raining down like a storm. Daniel blocked, dodged, rolled. his body moving with sharp precision. Each strike shook the ground, shattered stone, tore metal from broken walls. But Daniel was still standing. Sweat ran down his face, his arms ached, but his eyes burned with focus. Every block, every step, every breath carried the weight of humanity itself. Sarana grew faster, angrier. Her pride demanded his defeat. She swung with crushing force, and finally one strike connected. Her claw slammed across his side, sending him crashing against a wall. Dust burst around him as he hit the ground hard. The soldiers let out a cheer, certain the fight was over. But slowly, painfully, Daniel rose. His lip was bleeding, his shirt torn, but his eyes were still locked on hers. And then he spoke. Voice rough but steady. "Is that all you have?" The word struck harder than any weapon. The soldiers fell silent, their cheer fading. Even Sarana froze for a second, her arrogance cracking. How could this human still stand? Her fury burned hotter. "You will regret those words," she charged again, claws raised high. This time Daniel met her halfway. He ducked under her strike, stepped close, and slammed his fist into her midsection. The impact forced the air from her lungs, making her stumble back a step. For the first time in her long life, Sarana's body felt pain, real pain. Her eyes widened, her pride shaking. She had always been untouchable. No weapon, no soldier, no warrior had ever laid a hand on her in combat. But here stood a human, battered and bleeding, who had just forced her back. Her soldiers looked at her with shock, their faith trembling. Daniel stood tall, breathing heavy but unbroken. He wiped the blood from his lip and raised his fists again. "I told you, I am not afraid." Sarana's heart pounded, her anger boiling over. "You are nothing," she screamed, rushing at him with all her strength. The ground shook under her weight, her claws flashing. Daniel braced himself, blocking the first strike with his forearm, countering with a sharp elbow to her jaw. She reeled, more in shock than pain, and he pressed forward. He was smaller, weaker, yet his strikes came with the force of every human's defiance. Sarana stumbled again, her pride bleeding worse than her body. For a brief moment, their eyes met again, hers filled with fury and disbelief, his filled with quiet fire. And in that moment, she realized something she never thought possible. She was not untouchable. The square stood frozen, soldiers staring, survivors hidden in the ruins watching with wide eyes. The alien commander, their untouchable leader, had been struck. Daniel lowered his fists slightly, his chest heaving with breath, but his voice steady. "This is not your world. You will not break us." Her claws trembled at her sides. Pride clashed with fear inside her heart, and for the first time, Sarana understood the whispers. Humanity was different. Humanity was dangerous, but she would not admit it. Not yet. The broken square shook under Sarana's furious steps. Her black armor gleamed with dust and scratches, and her eyes glowed with rage. Around them, her soldiers stood frozen, watching their commander fight a single human who refused to fall. Daniel Hale stood across from her, chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. Blood ran down his lip, his shirt torn and his side aching from the earlier strike, but he did not step back. His fists were clenched, his stance firm. He was battered, yes, but not broken. Sarana's pride burned like fire inside her. She had never been touched in combat before. No enemy had ever forced her back, not even once. And now this human stood before her, scarred but standing tall, his eyes never leaving hers. "You dare make a fool of me?" she hissed, her voice sharp as blades. Daniel's answer was calm, steady. "I don't need to make a fool of you. You're doing it yourself." Her soldiers shifted uneasily. No one spoke to Sarana like that. No one. With a roar, Sarana rushed forward again, her claws slashing through the air. The ground cracked beneath her speed. She struck fast, wild, her fury guiding her hands. Daniel barely dodged the first swing, ducked under the second, then rolled aside as her claws smashed into the stone wall, breaking it apart. He rose quickly, eyes locked on her, watching every movement. He knew he couldn't match her raw strength. If he fought her head-on, she would crush him. But he had something she didn't: patience and control. Sarana lunged again. This time Daniel sidestepped, grabbing her wrist as it passed and pulling with all his strength. Her balance faltered for half a second, and he slammed his shoulder into her armored chest. She stumbled back, her armor scraping against the cracked ground. Her soldiers gasped again. Sarana's jaw tightened. "You are nothing but a pest." Daniel's breathing was heavy, but his voice was steady. "Then why can't you kill me?" The words cut through her pride like a blade. Rage clouded her mind. She struck again, claws flashing, but her movements were no longer calm. They were wild, angry, sloppy. Daniel blocked one, dodged another, then countered with a quick strike to her ribs. She growled, stumbling back once more. For the first time, Daniel saw it clearly, the cracks in her control. She wasn't just fighting him now. She was fighting her own pride. And that pride was making her weaker. He pressed forward, not with wild attacks, but with sharp, precise strikes. A fist to her midsection, an elbow to her jaw, a kick against her knee. Each strike forced her back a little more, each one breaking the illusion of her invincibility. Her soldiers whispered among themselves, their confidence fading. This was not the commander they knew. This was not the untouchable Serana. Serana roared, her voice shaking the air. She swung with all her might, a strike meant to end him once and for all. Daniel braced, blocking with his forearm, the impact sending pain shooting up his arm. But he held his ground. He twisted, using her momentum, and slammed his fist into her side. The sound echoed like thunder. Serana staggered, her claws scraping against the ground as she tried to steady herself. Her eyes burned with fury, but beneath the anger was something else, fear. Daniel saw it. "You feel it, don't you?" he said, his voice low, his eyes unblinking. "Fear? You thought no one could touch you? But here I am." Her breath came sharp and fast. She had never heard those words spoken to her. She had never imagined they could be true. The battle had shifted. She was still stronger, faster, more powerful in every way, but Daniel had taken control. His strikes carried the weight of every survivor hiding in the ruins, every human who refused to kneel. His resilience was breaking her pride, and with each moment the fight turned in his favor. The survivors hiding in the shadows watched with wide eyes. Their hope grew stronger with every second Daniel stood tall. They whispered to each other, voices trembling with awe. "He's winning. He's really winning." Serana's claws trembled at her sides. She looked at Daniel with a mix of hatred and disbelief. She had conquered worlds, destroyed armies, ruled with fear, and yet this human, this single human, was tearing down everything she believed about herself. Daniel raised his fists again, his body aching, his face covered in sweat and blood, but his voice was steady. "You wanted me alive. Here I am, but I won't bow, and I won't break." Her soldiers stared in silence, their faith in her shaken. Serana's chest rose and fell with ragged breaths. For the first time, she realized the truth. This fight was no longer about victory, it was about survival. The night air was heavy with smoke and dust. The ruined square was cracked and broken from the battle, pieces of stone scattered like bones. The alien soldiers stood frozen at the edges, silent, their glowing eyes watching every move. None dared step forward. In the center stood Serana, the commander who once called herself untouchable. Her black armor was scratched and dented, her claws trembling slightly at her sides. Her breaths came short and sharp, each inhale heavy with rage and disbelief. Across from her stood Daniel Hale. His body ached, his arms bruised, and blood streaked his face. Yet he stood tall, his stance steady, his eyes locked on hers. Every breath carried the weight of a human who refused to kneel. The air between them crackled with tension. Serana's pride screamed at her to destroy him, but her body told a different story. For the first time in her long life, she was tired. For the first time, she had been struck down again and again by a human. "You should be dead already," she spat, her voice sharp but unsteady. Daniel's answer was quiet but firm. "You can't kill what won't break." Her soldiers shifted uneasily, their faith cracking like thin glass. They had never seen her like this. They had never seen anyone stand against her, much less force her back. Serana roared, fury surging through her veins. She charged again, claws raised high, her armor flashing in the firelight. Her strike came fast, powerful, enough to tear stone apart. But Daniel moved faster. He stepped aside at the last second, his hand grabbing her wrist, twisting hard. She gasped as pain shot up her arm. Before she could counter, his shoulder slammed into her chest, forcing her backward. The soldiers gasped. Serana stumbled. Daniel did not stop. He pressed forward, strike after strike, fists slamming against her armor, knees driving into her body, his every move filled with raw defiance. She blocked, she clawed, but he matched her at every step. He was not stronger, not faster, but he was relentless. Her back hit the wall of a shattered building. Stone cracked under the impact. She tried to push forward, but Daniel's strength held her in place. His arm pressed against her chest, pinning her hard against the broken wall. For the first time, Sarana froze. The commander of countless battles, the untouchable alien leader, was trapped by a human. Her soldiers stared in disbelief. Whispers spread among them. "This is impossible. She's losing." "He pinned her." Sarana's claws scratched against the wall, her pride burning hotter than ever. Her glowing eyes locked onto Daniel's face, filled with fury, disbelief, and for the first time, fear. "You dare touch me?" she hissed, her voice trembling. Daniel leaned closer, his face inches from hers. His voice was calm, steady, unshaken. "You thought you were untouchable, but you were wrong." Her breath caught. For a moment, silence fell over the entire square. Even the fires around them seemed to fade, leaving only the sound of her heartbeat pounding in her ears. She struggled, twisting, clawing at his arm, but he held firm. His grip was unyielding, his presence overwhelming, and then he spoke again, his voice like stone. "Now you know what it means to face humanity." The words cut deeper than any blade. They tore through her pride, through her arrogance, through the mask she had worn for centuries. She had believed herself above all others, beyond defeat, untouchable. Yet here she was, pinned against a wall by a single human. Her soldiers shifted nervously, their faith in her broken. Some lowered their weapons. Others turned their eyes away. None dared speak. Sarana's chest rose and fell rapidly, her pride screaming, her mind racing. She had been humiliated. She had been defeated. But Daniel's eyes never left hers. They burned with the quiet fire of every survivor, every human who refused to bow. He did not look like a soldier, not like a warrior of legend. He looked like a man, ordinary, scarred, unbroken. And that was what made him terrifying. She finally whispered, her voice shaking. "What are you?" Daniel's answer was simple, steady, and filled with iron. "Human." The word echoed through the square, powerful and undeniable. Silence followed. The soldiers did not cheer. The survivors hiding in the shadows did not shout. Everyone only watched, stunned by what they had witnessed. Sarana, the untouchable commander, had been pinned by a human, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The square was silent. The flames of the ruined city flickered, casting shadows across the broken walls. Alien soldiers stood frozen, their glowing eyes fixed on the scene before them. None moved. None spoke. Sarana, the commander who once called herself untouchable, was pinned against the wall. Her armor was cracked, her claws pressed against the stone, but her strength meant nothing now. Daniel Hale stood before her, holding her in place with sheer willpower. His face was bruised, his body aching, yet his stance was unshaken. For the first time in her life, Sarana felt small. Her voice broke the silence, sharp but trembling. How can this be? You are only human." Daniel's eyes burned steady, his voice calm but filled with weight. "That is why you lost. You thought humanity was weak, but you never understood us." Her soldiers shifted uneasily, their faith unraveling. These were warriors who had followed Sarana across countless battles, who believed she could never fall. But now they saw the truth. She was not invincible. And the human standing before her was proof. Sarana's pride screamed inside her chest. She wanted to deny it, to strike again, to prove him wrong, but deep down she knew. His strength did not come from power or weapons. It came from something far greater. "You should have killed me when you had the chance," she whispered. Daniel shook his head slowly. "No, killing you would change nothing. But letting you live, that will remind you every single day of what you faced, and you will never forget it." Her eyes widened. His words cut deeper than any blade. Death would have been simple, an end she could accept as honor in battle. But this was worse. This was humiliation she would carry forever. Daniel stepped back slightly, lowering his arm but never breaking his gaze. Sarana staggered forward, free but defeated. Her claws trembled at her sides. For the first time, she could not meet the eyes of her own soldiers. The silence grew heavier. Finally, Daniel spoke again, his voice strong enough for all to hear. "You came here to break humanity. You thought we would kneel. But we don't kneel. We endure, we fight, and no matter how hard you push us, we will rise again." The words echoed across the ruins. The survivors hidden in the shadows felt their hearts surge with hope. Even the alien soldiers looked shaken, their faith in their commander shattered by the human's defiance. Sarana's chest rose and fell, her pride shattered. she had believed herself a goddess of war above all others. But a single human had proven her wrong. "You cannot win this war," she said, her voice softer now, almost broken. Daniel wiped the blood from his lip, his eyes never leaving hers. "Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but humanity cannot be broken. Remember that." Her soldiers shifted again, their armor clinking softly. Some lowered their weapons. Others looked away, ashamed. None dared to step forward. Daniel turned, his body weary but unbent. He looked toward the survivors, watching from the ruins, their eyes wide with awe. For them, this moment was more than a battle. It was proof that humanity still stood. Behind him, Serana sank to her knees, her pride gone. The alien commander, once untouchable, was now humbled by a human. The fires of the city burned bright, but for the first time in many nights, the survivors felt warmth not from the flames, but from hope. Daniel raised his voice one last time, steady and strong. "We are human, and we will never break." The words carried across the square, across the ruins, across the silence of the galaxy itself. And Serana, broken in spirit, could only bow her head. She had learned the lesson she had once laughed at. Humans may be small, fragile, and scarred, but they were unyielding. They were untouchable in a way she would never understand. And that truth would haunt her forever.